We are less than 1 month away from NHL free agency. Today we take a comprehensive look at all the players broken down by position as a go-to guide to see who's all on expiring contracts and who needs to be signed and might end up changing teams. We'll discuss that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're going to do the annual comprehensive look at NHL free agency. We do this every year. We're going to do a breakdown by position of all the players that are pending unrestricted free agents. So I'm recording this video on June the 4th, so obviously some players may have re-signed with their existing teams. By the time this hits YouTube, that could possibly change. I don't expect to see a whole lot of that, but there could be the odd one. So just in case anything is off or a player has re-signed, keep in mind the date. Of course, this is being recorded. So as I mentioned, we're going to break this down by position. We're going to look at the forwards, the defense, and the goalies. Take a look at how these players are going to be kind of ranked according to cap-friendly system where you can filter out all the expiring contracts. And we can look at things based on results last year, cap hit, etc. So we're going to hop onto the computer, go on to capfriendly.com, and take a look at their breakdown here and filter out all the players and look at all the players that are on the unrestricted free agent list. Now, there's going to be some groups that are really, really long. So in most cases, we've kind of looked at like the top 50. So we'll do a walkthrough here, and you can see who your team might be able to target based on who's possibly going to be available. Okay, we're going to start here with goaltenders, since there's not quite as many as them, and it's actually probably one of the weaker positions, to be honest. I mean, you got looking at last year's results, guys like Cam Talbot, Ilya Samsonov, Alex Nedeljkovic Anthony Stolarz, Scott Wedgwood, Laurent Brossoit, Calvin Pickard out of Edmonton, Antti Ranta, Casey DeSmith, James Reimers, your top 10. Based on last year's stats and cap hit, I mean, some of these guys are going to be tandem guys or backup guys. There's really no clear-cut starting goaltenders that's really available on this year's market. It's kind of a unique sense, but some of these guys that have been backups might be ready to take that step forward and might be able to provide some decent value here to some teams looking for that. You know, a guy like Alex Nedeljkovic might be able to rebound here. Obviously, he kind of, did a good job in Pittsburgh, Stolarz in Florida, Brossoit in Winnipeg. Certainly looking for more opportunities. So, to be honest, I think these guys could provide good value for teams that are looking for a 1A, 1B or don't have a lot of money to spend but want to try to improve their starting goaltending abilities here. But guys like Talbot and Samsonov certainly come with a little bit of added risk based on their up and down kind of results here the past few years. After that, if you look at the next 10, there's really not much there for, really consistency. You got Martin Jones, Kevin Lankinen, Capo Kakinen, Phoenix Copley, Prosvetov out of Colorado, Eric Comrie, Devin Cooley, Chris Drieger, Magnus Hellberg, Felix Sandstrom. A few of these guys might not even be in the NHL next year, to be honest. And some of them could be number 3s. Some of them might be able to get jobs as backups. Hard to say. But there's not a lot here, really. Cooley might be able to land a job in San Jose if he remains there. Otherwise, it's kind of difficult to say. It's kind of a thin market. Now, the defense market's going to be interesting. You got some guys here that could land some pretty good contracts. When you get Shane Gostisbehere, Brady Shea, Brandon Montour, Gustafsson, Ekman Larsson, Shattenkirk, Riley, DeMello, Myers, and Schultz are your top 10 rated UFA defense here as far as their cap hits and everything from last year. But I mean, looking at and points, Gostisbehere should be able to get himself a pretty good contract. He's pretty much at the point where he was, or even better than he was back in his first few years in Philly. Shea and Montour will be interesting as well. I think Brady Shea's going to have a real good market. Montour will get a lot of interest as well, but I know this past year hasn't been as good for him, but he's certainly proved to be a big piece of the Florida back end. So it's kind of difficult to say exactly where all these players go. Some of them might end up in their existing teams. Like I know Myers is rumored to be staying in Vancouver. I know Winnipeg has interest in DeMello. Whether or not they meet his asking price, I don't know. Obviously some of these other guys have been on shorter term deals and very well could find themselves on the move, but there is a handful of really interesting D there. Your next block of defense, there's certainly some interesting names there as well. You got Tyson Barrie, Sean Walker, and will John Klingberg make a comeback? Tony DeAngelo, TJ Brody, Alec Martinez may or may not retire. That's not sure yet. Matt Roy out of LA would be an interesting name. Jalen Chatfield in Carolina looking for a bigger role. Goligoski, Alex Carrier in Nashville. Certainly all guys who can be a combination of either second or third pair defensemen. If you're Tyson Barrie, you're looking for a team that's going to run, you can try to get on one of the power play units if you can. I know with a lot of NHL teams going to 1D on the power play instead of 2, which used to be traditional. It's kind of cut some D from getting that PP time, and Barrie's certainly a major, defenseman who can certainly attribute to that. But guys like Walker and Roy should be able to be pretty solid top 4 guys. To some degree, Chatfield could be as well. And with Carolina having so many defensemen on expiring contracts, he very well might be able to stay and get an increased role there. Be interesting to see how things go here with Jalen Chatfield. Our next group of defense has some interesting names too and could generate some big contracts, including Nikita Zadorov. You get Jacob McDonald, Dmitry Kulikov, Brendan Dillon, who's not expected back in Winnipeg, Chris Tanev in Dallas, Oliver Shillington, Brendan Smith, Hayden Fleury, Dennis Gilbert, and Nick DeSimone. Like I said, Zadorov's looking for a big payday after his playoff performance. We'll see where that goes. I know there is interest in Vancouver to retain him. Brendan Dillon, like I said, will be on the move. Tanev might stay in Dallas, but he's going to have a ton of interest, so I imagine he goes to market to see what his options are. Brendan Smith is rumored to not be back in Jersey. I know I've seen some reports that his place was for sale, so I don't think he's expected to be returning there. We know Brendan Dillon, very, very, very likely not going back to Winnipeg. Winnipeg's D will definitely look a lot different coming next year. Kulikov, of course, still playing with the Panthers in the finals here, so we don't have real word on what his future might hold. Your next group of D are pretty well a lot of depth options, including Jack Johnson, Caleb Jones, Josh Brown, Mark Giordano, Colin Miller, Yanni Hakanpää, Brett Pesce, on the other hand, not really a depth piece. He's on this list on this far down because he didn't put up a lot of points last year, but he'll get a real good contract. Pesce's likely going to get a 4 or 5 year deal with bigger money. I believe Nikita Zaitsev's heading back to Russia. Matt Grzelcyk likely not going back to Boston. I suspect he'll be on the move. Jarred Tinordi as well, but Pesce would be the main one in this block here to get a good size deal. He'll have tons of interest. And this final block of D here includes Dakota Mermis in Minnesota, Calvin Hahn, Tampa, Lucas Johansson out of Washington, Callie Rosen, Matt Dumba, who we know is not going back to Tampa, Sebastian Aho at the Islanders, Mark Stahl not going back to Philly. We can say that for certain. Ian Cole, it's possible he returns to Vancouver. Vinny Desharnais in Edmonton, again, debatable. They might sign him. It wouldn't be shocking, but that's not a given yet. And Travis Dermott with the Utah franchise. So certainly lots of good depth options there. Some guys who can certainly play on your third pair and, be a veteran presence in a few of those cases. Some of them are still younger D looking for, to solidify themselves more like Desharnais. Switch over to the forward group, and this is going to be an interesting one. There's lots of big names here. You've got Jake Gensel, Sam Reinhart, Steven Stamkos, Patrick Kane, Jonathan Marchessault, Victor Arvidsson, Joe Pavelski, who we just learned is likely calling it a career, Matt Duchene, Vladimir Tarasenko, and Sean Monahan are your top 10 based on points per game. That's a pretty deep group of guys. Now, some of these guys are going to stay put. I think that's a given. I know there's interest for sure, and I would expect, but you can't say absolute certain, that Reinhart and Stamkos get a deal done. I think Marchessault has a good chance to get a deal done. Otherwise, it's kind of up in the air. I think there's interest in a few of these cases to bring guys back. I know Patrick Kane, I have a feeling, doesn't return to Detroit, but that's just me. I don't think they're going to give him the term he's looking for. Gensel does have a possibility of staying in Carolina, but based on the recent intel, says that he will be going to market to kind of test and see what's out there. So a really deep group, mostly wingers in this case, but a deep group of guys with lots of ability to score goals here. Now this next group also some interesting names, some good middle six options for sure, maybe some top six depending on a few of these guys. But you get Jonathan Drouin, had a bounce back here in Colorado, Teuvo Teravainen in Carolina, Tyler Toffoli in Winnipeg, Chandler Stevenson, Adam Henrique get traded to Edmonton at the deadline. I don't see him likely returning there. David Perron, a veteran who's bounced around a little bit but it's always produced. Anthony Mantha, who had a bit of a comeback season as well. Max Domi is going to be looking to try to stay in Toronto if he can, but Will they meet his asking price? Elias Lindholm will be one of the top centers out there. Didn't have the best season points-wise, but he did finish strong and had a good playoff. So I suspect he'll still get a bigger contract given the premium position he plays and the strong two-way game that he plays as well. Lindholm's going to be very interesting. Not likely that he returns to Vancouver, in my opinion. Anthony Duclair also in this group of forwards. Lots of interesting names here. Like I said, some of them will probably end up staying with their existing teams, but I don't think Toffoli will be back in Winnipeg. He probably moves. I think Teravainen probably moves. Stevenson probably moves. He's probably going to get priced out of Vegas. David Perron's going to be interesting. He's got a few options. He might be able to go back to Detroit. Domi maybe goes back to Toronto. Otherwise, I think a lot of these guys are going to find themselves with new teams next year. This next group also has some pretty good options for your middle six. You got Daniel Sprong, who seems to score everywhere as he goes the last little while here. Of course, he's most recently in Detroit. Be interesting to see if he stays. Tyler Bertuzzi in Toronto. James Van Riemsdyk. I get the impression from Boston media he's not going to be returning to the Bruins. Jack Roslovic in New York was most likely a rental. He'll be likely on the go. Dakota Joshua will be one of those interesting middle six depth options that might prove difficult for Vancouver to keep, and it'll be interesting to see if a team overpays to get his services. You got Milan Lucic, of course, who didn't return to the Bruins after having an off-ice domestic issue and ended up in court. I'm not sure what the future holds for Lucic. I would say he probably doesn't return to the NHL, but I can't say that with certainty. You got Travis Boyd, another Bruin, and Jake DeBrusk. DeBrusk is going to have a big market for him. Obviously, still a younger UFA who can score 25, 30 goals. His future in Boston has been up. It's been an up and down career for him in the Bruins organization. It's really difficult to say what his future holds there. I know there's been times when he's wanted out and times when they figured things out and made him stay. So I'm not sure what the future holds here for Jake DeBrusk. You've also got Warren Fogle, who had a 20-goal season in Edmonton. Max Pacioretty. I don't know if Pacioretty continues on or not. He's had a lot of injuries the past couple of years, and to me, just wasn't quite the same player and wasn't quite as effective. We continue on now with your 30 through 40 based on points per game last year. Danton Heinen in Boston. I think they should re-sign him myself. We'll see if they work something out. You got Jason Zucker in Nashville. Tyler Johnson, definitely not heading back to Chicago. Stefan Nason in Carolina, who's a pretty low-key, under-the-radar, kind of good, sneaky good player. I think he probably would have interest to return to Carolina, but he might be difficult for them to retain. You get Teddy Bluger in Vancouver. I think there's interest to sign him, but again, tricky. Corey Perry, I don't know what the future holds for him. He's bounced around so much. At 39 years old, will he want to continue playing? I'm not sure. You get Riley Tufte, Brandon Biro, you got Kiefer Sherwood, and Jordan Martinook. Now, Martinook had a real nice season as well in Carolina, playing all 82 games, can play special teams, and had a 32-point campaign. He very well might be a player who priced himself out of Carolina. I know he's been there for quite a while. He's a very popular teammate and popular with the fans, and I think they'll try to do everything they can to keep him, but might prove to be a little bit too costly based on how strong he's played lately. Now we have 41 through 50, where you've got Blake Wheeler and Alex Wenberg, both rentals by the Rangers. I'm not sure Wheeler continues, but we'll see what happens with him. Wenberg likely gets moved through free agency. Michael Amadio likely not going back to Vegas. Sam Gagner, Mike Hoffman, who been on a downward trajectory. I'm not sure what the future holds for him. Tomas Tatar, 24 points last year, split between New Jersey and Seattle. Again, 33 years old. He can still play. Hard to say. You get Nick Patan, Anthony Richards, Sheldon Rempel, and Kyle Okposo. Okposo, of course, chasing a Stanley Cup as I record this with Florida. I think the outcome of that very well might play a role in his decision here and what to do next. And this last group's had some interesting names too, including Pat Maroon, Sam Lafferty, Kasperi Kapanen, Victor Olofsson, Jakub Vrana, Matthew Highmore, Anthony Beauvillier, Alex Barabanov, Colin Blackwell, Craig Smith, Nicholas Aube-Kubel, and Andrew Cogliano. So some interesting bottom six options there. Some of these guys are great on the PK. Some of them are great skaters. Don't put up a lot of points, so they don't always get a lot of recognition. But some interesting veteran names there that could fill out a roster and take a spot for a cheap contract. So they should be able to, most of these guys, I would think, find work throughout the league on some team. So that is your comprehensive breakdown of all the pending unrestricted free agents as of today, June 4th. Of course, as I mentioned, July 1st is free agency. That's free agent frenzy day. We're going to see all kinds of new signings. Some players will sign ahead of time and remain, of course, with their existing clubs, but there'll be lots that are changing teams here as well. So let me know your thoughts on which players you want to see your team target, and give me some ideas on what contracts you see being reasonable for some of the top names out there in this year's market. New to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.